Well, hello. My name is Bruce Reyes-Chow. I use he, him pronouns, and I am presenting to you the first portion of a presentation that I gave about my month in Palestine through most of April. Now, we had some technical difficulties during the live showing of this, so I am sharing this now, pretending that there are people here, but I'm going to zoom through some of the orientation things. But this is the first slide people got. So we are going to talk a little bit about the horrible and the holy and reporting back on my recent time in Palestine, again, from a presentation that I delivered on Zoom on the 10th of May, 2025. So what we're generally going to do for this first portion is we will do some introductions. I'll tell you about the delegations that I was on, and then we'll show images and reflections and takeaways. And then we tried to record it, but we weren't able to. And then part two, I did some question and response time with folks. It was actually really engaging time. We did not record that, so you won't be able to see that. So let me just tell you about the kind of space we were trying to create during the presentation time that I just assumed everybody would be generous and gracious. And I did have people there watching the chat just in case anybody got out of line. And we asked people to just mute and turn off their video for that previous time. And then I will just share verbally some of the specifics, not as much in written form. You know, people can find out a lot of things, but trying to have some level of safety. And that these reflections are limited and they are really just mine and not from our inviting organizations or supporting organizations or the other delegation members. So we would all have very different versions of what we saw. We could be in a room and hear and see and notice different things. So this is just my take for two delegations that I was part of. So a little bit of introduction first. The inviting organization was Sabeel, the Sabeel Ecumenical Liberation Theology Center. I have been on 4 delegations now with Sabeel since 2024, and an organization that is rooted in Palestinian Christian experience, but does ecumenical work and interfaith work as well. And they're the inviting organization that invited me and others over time to come and see. And then FOSNA, which is the Friends of Sabeel North America, which is the North American entity that supports Sabeel, often with training, with, in this case, North American orientations, as well as some of the fiscal kinds of things that are more helpful when they are done in North America. And want to know, all these pictures were actually from the delegations. Either I took them or our 2 photographers that were on the 2 delegations went. Julie, we are the Richers on Instagram, and Joseph at JSEPHP on Instagram. I'll put all this stuff in the notes when you see it. So first, there were a lot of folks who I knew, but many who I did not. So just a little bit introduction. I'm a Presbyterian minister, been ordained in the PC USA, the Presbyterian Church USA, for the past 30 years. I come out of a small church in Stockton, California, that was founded out of activism and community organizing. And so that's what I grew up in. I grew up in a mainline progressive Christian experience and have lived that and served in that way over my 30 years of ministry. I currently write and speak and get to travel and listen to folks, tell stories of justice and faith, and try to continue to create community in a lot of places. I am in San Jose currently after living in San Francisco, Sacramento, Stockton. We were in San Francisco for about 30 years. We raised our 3 adult children now. Note, if any of you are Harry Potter people, one of our kids made those Harry Potter sweaters for us, so that's why I love to use that picture. And then the favorite child, just so you know, is my dog, Vespa, who is an English Bull Terrier, by the way. But I am a person that loves to kind of meet people, engage, convene people together as we're trying to do some good in the world. And so this has been my role. I have been on delegations, and I have been the delegation convener. So I'm the delegation convener for these two past trips. This was the picture of us after we crossed the border into Palestine, to occupied Palestine, and they wouldn't let our bus to come in to come get us. So we had to send him a selfie, which is a little dangerous because you're taking pictures at the border, which you're not supposed to. We had to send that to our bus driver so that he could prove, no, there are people waiting for me. And so we eventually got in. But my role with the delegation was to recruit delegation members, to do orientation and training, and to, I think in many ways, lower anxiety about traveling to Palestine, and to kind of give an understanding of what we could expect as much as possible. So I love gathering people together again. And when we're doing kind of good work and we're hearing powerful stories with the intent to come back and tell and share, that is right where my heart sings. And so this is what I got to do this past April of 2025. The two delegations that we went on, one, these are pictures of each of them. One was an organizational one for organizational leaders, people who were part of either congregations or organizations, nonprofits. So we focused in that kind of meetings with people. The second one on the side there was a group that was there over Holy Week, which is a very unique, special time to be there. So this was a walking in faith group, and so even if you weren't Christian or religious, just the cultural experience of being in the Holy Land for Holy Week was quite amazing. So I'll talk about all of this. Both of these trips, just so you know, are not both sides. They're not a trip that is supposed to help people decide if genocide is happening or decide if occupation or apartheid are taking place. But this was to give experience, story, vision to their activism and solidarity with Palestinians already. And so it gave depth and texture to what folks really already believed. So we got to dive deeper together. The first one, Grassroots Partners in Justice, again, it was made up of people who wanted to bring things back to the organization, to develop content, to see how organizations could possibly share the story. The picture on the left there is at University of Dar al Kalima University at Bethlehem. The picture in the middle is at Tent of Nations in Bethlehem. And on the back is our time at Nabi Samuel, a village that I'll talk about in a minute. The second group was a walking in faith, a Palestinian pilgrimage to the empty tomb. It was a unique kind of first time Sabeel has done this Holy Week time. And so there were a lot of discoveries that we made. I don't know if it'll happen again, but maybe in a couple of years, hopefully that would happen. Powerful time. So we did a lot of seeing and listening to people, but also participated in a lot of different things. The picture on the left there is through the old city during the Stations of the Cross. And the pictures on the right there is from Silwan, a place that has a lot of home destruction and demolition. And that up in that middle is a couple of pictures from an art activist project called Eyes of Silwan. Again, I'll include all these links in the post below. But these are the things that we got to see. We were not actually to be able to go into Silwan because there was military action happening there, and we didn't feel it was safe to bring our group in. But so this was this group. It was a little longer trip, powerful time to be in Palestine. The focus of all the delegations were really about first timers to see, again, to give depth and texture to their activism and solidarity with Palestine. And so it wasn't a time to go. We were not there to be activists. This was not about protective presence or an accompaniment. There are groups that do that, and that is valuable work to do, but that is not what these intentions were. We were there to go and support organization individuals, to hear story, to see with our own eyes things we have been seeing before, and to get a better breadth of what's going on in Palestine. Not that we were ignoring what was happening in Gaza, but to be in the West Bank, to be in East Jerusalem, to see the breadth of what it means to live under occupation and apartheid. And ultimately, it was to come and see and then come back and tell, right? To tell these stories because Palestinians unfortunately know that they're not being listened to. And so maybe some of us can bring these stories back. And plus, they're tired of telling the stories and having no one listen. So on the left there, I'll talk a little bit more, is about Easter morning of watching violence and detention happening on Easter morning. The middle one there is our group meeting with Ahmed, who is at the educational bookshop in East Jerusalem. And the bottom one there is meeting with the community from Nabi Samuel, again, the village that is a microcosm of home demolition and lack of freedom of movement. I'm going to start with the horrible because I think part of a good thing to know are all the things that are happening that are not just about Gaza. You know, we were not chasing war zones. We were not going to Gaza. That didn't mean that we were safe in a sense of there was still military all around us. There were still civilians, settlers who were strapped with AK-47s. I mean, there was all kinds of things, but we were not there to see the actual intent was not to see the violence and the destruction, not to ignore it, but to see a little more depth to what it means, again, to live amidst occupation and apartheid. So um, uh, the images that I'm going to show you aren't about war zones or any of that, because that is not the only thing right now. In fact, it's the distraction that the Israeli government, the U.S.-backed Israeli government, is using to increase their aggression in the West Bank. So we start with the horrible. Um, there was intimidation all around us. So again, as we traveled, as we moved through space, again, our US and Canadian passports protected us to some extent where we were going when we went through checkpoints, all of that, and we never went anywhere that we felt like it was that people were going to be around who didn't absolutely care about those passports. But we knew we have access to places. But that didn't mean that we weren't always surrounded by the Israeli occupation forces or the Israeli defense forces. I use IOF as the title for them. This was during Palm Sunday, right? So we're walking into Jerusalem, and throughout the entire time, we're reminded, these Christians are reminded that they are not really in control of movement. They are being allowed to move and do these rituals. So there was military lined up all the way around. That happened in multiple places at every march. All kinds of things were to happen with intimidation, which I'll talk a little more later. We did see violence, not to the extent that you see in the West of all the things happening, especially around Gaza or in places where there aren't international observers, but we still did see it. So you can imagine if they know there's a bunch of internationals around and are still committing acts of violence, what it must be in places that there are not internationals or that they don't feel like the eyes of the world are on them. This picture itself is this older gentleman was trying to hop the fence, which might not have been a very good idea, into that shady spot because it was warm, and they just basically tossed him back over. And this was just one instance of what we saw and how police and military acted towards people. One key element of apartheid is freedom of movement and control of movement. Wherever we went, we were reminded we were on roads that we could be on because we had on our car or our bus a particular license plate. Because we were internationals, we could be sometimes on roads that were built for Israel and settlers. And most of the time, though, we were on roads that were the ones for Palestine. And so control of movement was about who got to be on whose road. Checkpoints happened. So checkpoints were meant to often leave clear lanes and clear travel for settlers and to block Palestinians from getting home, getting to work, or in this case, control of movement, or building walls that they would call security or separation walls. These are walls of apartheid, which keep people from cultivating their land or keep them from going home or in any short distance. So oftentimes we'd be driving along one of these barriers and we would know that we wanted to get just on the other side, but we'd have to drive an hour one way to come back around the other way. All of this are subtle ways to reinforce you live under occupation. So control of movement was a significant part of the things that we saw and experienced. One of the most, I think, heartbreaking things that we learned around the way bodies are handled and graves and funerals. As you know, you've seen on the West lots of funerals of Palestinians that get disrupted by the IOF. And all those kind of things. But there's another element to this, and that has been used in this particular conflict over time, as well as through generations of conflict between countries and entities, that keeping the bodies of those who have died. And so the Israeli government, they hold on to Palestinian prisoners who have died. And some of the excuse is, well, they need to serve their sentence. So a body is serving the sentence. There's also an understanding that when you don't get to bury your loved ones, that leaves this kind of sense of a lack of closure, and you're not fully able to grieve. And there's, again, a reminder over and over again. And this goes for anybody, right? It has been used strategically by the Israeli government, but this has been what we have learned and it's used over time and generations and centuries around how we understand the bodies and the dead bodies of our enemies. This picture here is a gravesite in Ein Karam, a village that I'll talk about in a little bit, where the grave is known, it's marked, they've been told they can't move it or build on it, but yet in this settlement that has been taken over by settlers, it is being disrespected and being built over and overgrown and all of this. And so the bodies, funerals, those kinds of things that we don't get to do if you're Palestinian, again, reminding about living in occupation and apartheid. One of the things you understand and you've heard about is home demolition. Again, this is a picture of meeting with a community in Nabi Samuel, one of the many villages where uh, inhabitants receive demolition notices. Now, in the West, you would say, well, why are they getting demolition notices? Well, it's because they built without permits. And you're like, well, if you built without permits, then you're taking a risk. Why would you do that? Because you know they're going to get demolished. Well, that's a Western kind of understanding or a lack of understanding about how this happens. So let's say the intent of Israel, which we understand as of today, many of us have known that has been made official, not only in Gaza, but there is an intention to clear out Palestinians and to have Israel continue to expand its borders. Now, if you want to get people out of their homes, you destroy them. Well, how do you manage to do that so that people can intellectually do the gymnastics to be like, that's okay? Well, if you're a Palestinian family, and you have a home and your family is growing, you want to add on. And so you would normally, in where I live in the Bay Area, you would apply for a permit. Yes, it would take a long time and there's a lot of rigmarole, but you would eventually get it and you could build it legally. Well, there, Palestinians will apply for permits for new homes to build on, all these things, and they're never approved. And so after time, you're only left to go ahead and build illegally. And so the Israeli sets this up to be a failure. So then they find out, you build illegally, and then they give you a demolition notice, and you don't even know when your house is going to be demolished. I've heard stories in these delegations where some families sleep in their clothes because they could come in the middle of the night and demolish your home. And not only that, after your home is demolished, you get sent a bill for the demolition. So one of the saddest, heartbreaking things that happens is that people will self-demolish. So one, they will pay for the demolition of their own home, but they get to remove the things that their personal belongings, and it's not the anxiety of when are they going to show up is not there. But it's still, can you imagine you needing to self-demolish your home in a setting that is unjust anyway? And so demolition of homes is a strategic way to continue to make life so terrible for Palestinians that they will leave. And that is a sinister and tactical way that, again, US-backed Israel government is trying to clear Palestinians from Palestine. So we saw that and heard stories about demolition. We also heard stories about detention. There's a lot of conversations about hostages and prisoners and all these kinds of things. For many of us, we believe that all prisoners held by Israel are hostages, and all hostages should be released. But we understand, though, that Palestinians held by Israel are not treated in any way with any kind of due process. There is a thing called administrative detention, which means that you can be held for any reason for 6 months, and that can continue to be it can be renewed for another 6 months, and so you have thousands of men, women, and children who are being held in detention without any charges at all. This is not a democracy, as we hear, but it is a way that Israel tries to maintain control, intimidation over a population. This is a picture of Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday is for the Orthodox Church. Easter Saturday. This Easter Saturday for the Orthodox Church is the day that the Holy Fire is released from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But Israel does not allow people to go into the old city to go to church. There's a very few that are allowed in, and they keep a crowd outside. And at one point, the crowd was like, "Let us in, let us in," and something set off the police. They jumped over, grabbed this young man, and you could hear the wails of his family. Because if you have ever been in an action in the United States or in Canada, act of civil disobedience, for the most part, though this is changing, I know that if I'm arrested, I'm going to be out that day or the next. Like I'm not intentionally, again, things are changing. I'm not thinking, oh no, I don't know what's gonna, I could be in there for years, right? But in this case, that is exactly what could be happening to this young man. Not only could he be sent away under administrative detention for 6 months, a year, more, um, the odds are that we heard from an organization called War Child that he will be physically abused, emotionally abused, and possibly sexually abused. And so we understand that standing up to empire, to the colonial force, to occupation, has significant repercussions. And so this young man, we had to watch as the military tackled him to the ground and took him away. I will say that his face of defiance, it wasn't hate or anger, but the face of you don't have authority over me was powerful to see. We also heard from what I would say freedom fighters that we won't talk about who they were, but we heard some folks who talked about the way they were treated in prison, the beatings, the strip searches, the setting them up to commit violence, and their ongoing kind of pressures to confess to things that they did not do. Detention is used as a weapon of war upon the Palestinian people. It continues to do so. So we got glimpses of that. This idea about displacement, I mentioned Nabi Samwell, their idea that they're trying to displace people uh, from Palestine by demolishing homes. We got to go to one place called Ain Karam. It's a village that in 1948 it was one of the few Palestinian villages that were not destroyed. People were expelled. Palestinians had to leave, but it was given to Israeli settlers. And so in 1948, these homes, they're beautiful, they're amazing. You go there now, and if you were to look on TripAdvisor, it would say it's this like bohemian, charming, cute neighborhood. And if you didn't know anything about it, you would probably go and think this is this great little place to walk around. There's restaurants and shops, but it's all built on a neighborhood that the families that lived there were expelled in 48 and are still alive. And so you have homes. This isn't like generations past, right? You have homes taken over by Israeli settlers from expelled Palestinians who had to give up their homes. And so we took a tour through this place with an amazing historian. I still will say this is one of the few times that we felt a little bit unsafe, is that we did have a settler come who had an automatic weapon strapped on his back and came up to the group and was listening. But we, stayed there. We listened. We watched our Palestinian leaders to see if and when we needed to leave. But the idea that uh, we could just take over entire villages, entire land, right? The United States and Canada, we know what this does and what we've done generations and generations and generations ago. This is current time. This is within the memory of those who are still alive. So displacement is a huge part of exerting of occupation and apartheid in the region. And lastly, the most horrible thing that I think we got was that folks are exhausted. While there were certainly brave faces put on for presentations, and our leaders from Sabeel, we know that this has been, since 1948, generational trauma. Recently, over the last, 18 months, what is happening in Gaza, even before that, what was happening in the West Bank, all the ways in which apartheid, occupation, intimidation are reinforced every day to remind Palestinian people, one, that our intent is to have you leave your land, and two, we will do that by any means, violence, intimidation, uh, control of movement, all those kinds of things. And so I felt many times like these folks are having to again tell their trauma to groups of strangers who they know um, are advocates and activists for them, but still have to continue to tell the story, knowing that nobody has listened to them, and so they have to tell it to strangers so that possibly the world will hear. And so there is this level of exhaustion that I think we underestimate. From a Western view of what is exhaustion, this is generational core exhaustion around what U.S.-backed Israel has done, as well as what the world has not done in the face of occupation, apartheid, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. There's a lot more horrible we saw, but I don't want to leave it there, because one of the dissonances that we had was that there's a horribleness and there was the holy, right? There was the reminders of us to us that resistance takes many forms, and that those moments are holy. That is where, in my tradition, the Spirit takes hold and God makes God's self known in the midst of pain and struggle, violence, and occupation. And so I want to share with you some of the ways in which we did see the holy, which is going to seem awfully strange, because if you've never been, or if your only impression of Palestine is what you see on your news feed, which are important to know, it is also important to know about what resistance looks like when you've been living under occupation and apartheid for 70 plus years. This was one that the Duba Dance Group, this is not their exact studio, but a group of us got to meet with them. This is Debka, right, where it is a traditional kind of dance in the region, but the Palestinian Debka has incorporated resistance to it. And Hannah, who is the teacher there in the front, helped us to learn some of that. I mean, it was not graceful, but it was powerful to see, one, how he and that organization gather young people, young adults, to learn this dance and travel and tell the story. And it's an act of resistance. And so we got to learn some of that and feel in our bodies a glimpse of what it meant to resist through dance. And so powerful, powerful time. We also went to, which is this odd thing, we're going to a library, and this was the Siraj Library and Storytelling Project. It is an organization that has a library in Ramallah, and then it has 13 libraries and branches throughout Palestine, where they bring library reading, storytelling for mostly women and children, but ways for people to connect intellectually, creatively, and to begin to tell the stories of their ancestors, their own stories, in order to, again, not lose their connection to one another and to the land. And so we heard amazing storytelling. We heard a lot about what community involvement means through this particular program. Pretty amazing. Again, I'm going to share all these links in the comments. This is the storytelling that we heard, which was really powerful. You can see everybody is just captured by the storytelling that happened. So the Siraj Storytelling Project. We had a chance to go to Dar al Khalima University. And meet with Mitra Rahab about who is the president, and talk about the theology of resistance, to talk about what it means to have a university that's focused on arts and creativity for the next generation, and to have a university in basically the refugee camp, Bethlehem, and all that. And it was a deep, meaningful time. This is the first delegation, so it was small, and we sat around the table and had great conversations. The brilliance, theological, intellectual brilliance of Mutri is amazing. He'll have a new book coming out called Theology After Gaza, which I think you should see. One of our delegation members is a PhD student, and so they got to nerd out a little bit, and it was beautiful and wonderful to see. So it was a way for us to dive into the intellectual, academic, theological kind of space around occupation and current genocide. And this is another one of those. We went to the circus, which it's not the kind of circus that you all might think. I think more of this is like circus arts, so trapeze and juggling and trampoline and all these kind of things. And for a while, we were like, wow, what? Okay, we're gonna go to the circus. Part of this is we trusted our host to show us the things that were important for us to see. This circus was amazing. I'm not showing you pictures of us trying to do these things because they're not flattering, but to watch these young people not only perform some of these kind of physical things, but the way that this provided a space of joy and hope. I mean, all you could feel is like, this is resistance. This is, you do not define how we are going to find joy and hope in our bodies and our spirits. And so it was amazing to watch these young folks move and do all the things, and just have some kind of like regular normalcy, as a way to say occupation does not define us, and in many ways our minds are not occupied. So the Palestinian Circus, amazing, and so glad that we got to do it. Both organizations, we were invited to participate in community engagement, not just to go listen to people, but they put us to work. They're like, can you go? We're going to have you go help with these few things. So we got to do an Easter egg hunt, which was just like Easter egg hunts in a lot of places where the little kids get trampled by the big kids, you got to separate them. There's all kinds of things. Some kids are creative with how they search. Some of the hiders are mean when we hide eggs. I mean, it was just, again, being community together and seeing the power of Sabeel in particular in drawing, especially Palestinian Christians together, when the Christians in Palestine are, between 1% and 2%, so not a lot. So that was one. The second group, we went to this community creativity and arts hub that is in the old city of Jerusalem that Sabeel has created. And one of the things they do is to paint. So we hung out with the community and we painted together. Some of us have less talent than most of the others, but we got to just sit and chat as well as we could, but to just be creative together. Again, these are moments of resistance within occupation that says our creativity and our craft is not occupied as well. Um, one of the beautiful places that we got to go to was the Educational Bookshop. You've probably heard of it. You can Google it. I'll share links with it. The owners, where the bookstore was raided twice in the last 6 months, owners arrested, and there's charges against them. We met with Ahmed, one of the owners, who I've gotten to know over my time there, and he gave us a great basics 101 about permits, about areas, about IDs, about all the ways in which Palestinians are erased from uh, acknowledgement that they exist. It is an amazing bookshop. There's two of them. There's one that's an Arabic language one, and then there's one in English. I would encourage you, if you have books you want to order about Palestine or even other things, to use Educational Bookshop. They do ship, then they have a lot of great titles. An organization well worth supporting. In fact, any of the organizations I meet with, I'll be including links and how you can give and subscribe to their newsletters. We were there for Holy Week, and so we did a lot of different things, Way of the Cross, all these things. But in the first delegation, we got to participate in an ecumenical walk of the Sabeel Contemporary Way of the Cross, which does the Stations of the Cross through Palestinian eyes. So each station has a story of Palestinian occupation or liberation or something that goes with each of the Stations of the Cross. During Lent, different religious organizations walk the stations, and this we got to go to the one that Sabeel did for during Lent before Holy Week. Diving into Holy Week, though, for those of us who identify as Christians like myself, we had no idea what to expect. There were things that we have in our head about Holy Week, the week leading up to Easter. We got to walk in the Palm Sunday. That was like the one that seemed the most like this is what it's going. This is what we expected. We actually walked from the Garden of Gethsemane and walked as Jesus did. I feel any need to say this is exactly the path, but waving palms into Jerusalem. I mean, it was a surreal, amazing experience. But that was the only one that was like, oh, I know what this is. This first one, Maundy, Thursday, where for many of us, that is a night where we celebrate we remember the Last Supper. We get to know about. Get to know about what it means for Jesus to have shifted Passover to be into a different meal for those who identify as Christian. Sometimes we wash each other's feet. We talk about servanthood, but there we actually pick up after this and we walk from. Oh, I said the Garden of Gethsemane for the Palm Sunday. It's actually the Mount of Olives. In this case, we walk from the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus is arrested, and we walk all the way to where he is killed. And it's candlelit. It's very solemn. You can see how many people are there. Now, this is the picture. You can see how many people are there. Most of the folks who are in this picture are Jerusalemites who live in East Jerusalem already, or are internationals like our group who just can gain access through a regular visa international process. The US-backed Israeli government, they do not let all Christian Palestinians or Palestinian Christians actually come into Jerusalem for Holy Week. People apply for permits, and a vast majority are turned down. Or they're said, well, you can come in this case, on the 21st, which is the day after Easter. So this was well, it seemed like a lot of people. This is nothing like it was before when Palestinian Christians could be there. It is tightened down. Occupation has strengthened its grip on the old city. And so the number of people that are allowed in during this week who are Palestinian Christians was far less than in previous years. So, but this was the walk on Maundy, Thursday. On Good Friday, normally, where I come from, my tradition, we either have an evening service or an afternoon service, and it is to remember the death. It is a powerful time for us to drop into that moment of death, to that moment of sorrow and of grief. But there, what they do is they do a funeral for Jesus, because Jesus was never gifted a funeral. And so, out of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, what is also known as the Church of the Resurrection, a symbolic casket is brought out into the square, and it walks slowly where those flags are around 3 times, with people putting flowers on. And so they are given the opportunity to get to bury Jesus, which he was not given that opportunity, like so many are today, which I will get to in a minute. So that was Good Friday. Then on Easter Saturday, so little did I know, and this is I should have, is that for the Orthodox Church, Saturday is Easter, like that midnight time, the actual day, the next day, not like Saturday morning is not the big time. It's Saturday night when there's a experience called the celebration of the Holy Fire. There is a flame that comes out of the tomb of Jesus in the Holy Sepulchre, Church of the Holy Sepulchre, or the Church of the Resurrection. And that flame, it comes out and it's dispersed among its people. And then those run out to outside the city and begin to pass that flame on to other people. So that flame then goes to congregations and communities throughout Palestine. And then some magical way, it crosses water and borders and air and all that. And so if you go to an Orthodox church anywhere in the world, that flame originated at this Easter Saturday in Jerusalem. And if your flame goes out somewhere, you just go to the next Orthodox church, or you relight the burning element into your church. So it's an amazing ritual. And so, even though people weren't being allowed in, when those flames came rushing out, it was amazing to watch our Palestinian leaders, but the people, even though intimidation and violence were all around, the joy of welcoming in the fire, which is the metaphor and the expression of Jesus being alive and Jesus' flame spreading, it was pretty powerful. This is a picture of us on Saturday night at the Coptic church's celebration, where these long candles were amazing. It did make us a little nervous. There were a lot of very young children with just live flame, open flame running around. But we got to watch that for a little bit. It was a powerful moment of watching the flames being passed. All right, so that is just a glimpse of the horrible and the holy. There's so much more that I could have shared, but I think it's important for me to share some of my takeaways, my personal takeaways to this. The first is, there is always hope. Yes, there are times where we feel hopeless in the world, and I don't want to say just don't feel those things. But over and over again, what we heard from people was that um, there is hope. Some of that stems from one of our leaders, for example. His family was one of the first 13 families that converted to Christianity at Pentecost. And so he would say to us, my family has seen hundreds of kingdoms come and go. Our people will outlast the kingdom of the United States. It will outlast Israel. Empire does not live forever, but those who have been on this land somehow have stayed together. Now, that gives you this long vision of hope. Now, it doesn't mean you ignore what's happening right now, but it reminds me that of people who have every right to be hopeless and to give up. and to say there's just no reason to think it's going to get better. Like, how dare I not be hopeful when they are, right? So that is for me what lies in my hope. It lies in my ancestors who did work that made the world better today than it would have been if they didn't. It reminds me that I live out of hope, knowing that I'm creating something for generations down, that if I don't do the work now and I don't hope and believe something better will come, then my work is useless. So remember, there's hope. I try not to let my soul be occupied by fear. This was probably the one delegation series that I've gone on that I felt a little more fearful, and is mostly about coming back to the US. And I think that was, well, there is some reason, but I think many of us activist types probably overestimate how much the US government is tracking us. Again, it is real, and I think there's a difference between letting fear occupy your soul and being realistic, being cautious, being urgent, and being diligent. And those can often feel like fear, but I think there's an element of what does it mean for fear to really occupy us? And we were told on multiple times that in many ways the US is more occupied than the people in Palestine because our souls are occupied. And so to fight that, I think about Hannah and his dances, and we watched him dance after we tried to. We asked him if he would do something and showed powerful movements and that are radical and full of resistance. And there is no fear, right? There is urgency and there's determination, and I'm sure there is worry, but there is no fear. And so I try not to let my soul be occupied by fear. I think we have to maintain and build relationships and friendships. These are two of the folks who I've gotten to know over the past year and a half. Who have become friends, right? Yes, they're helping us and leading things, but the number of table conversations and things we've shared about each other and conversations we have in between delegations, right? These are now friends. These are people who I can't just think about what's happening as if nobody is involved, right? Religious leaders are important to know, political leaders are important to know, but friendships with everybody in any region help to make this much more real. So I encourage you to, I know I'm going to build and maintain those friendships. And then I think, you strategically engage in personal and communal activism, advocacy, and affirmation. First, I want to talk about is activism. That activism is about, for me, you are risking something. You are risking something and you know it, right? Uh, there are acts that this picture itself during the funeral of Jesus, there were families that got to Sabeel and asked us if we would hold pictures of children who didn't get funerals. Now, Palestinians were never going to be able to do this picture because their ramifications would be much higher than ours. So we were asked, would we be willing to do it? And this was a moment of a little bit of more activism than we thought we would do, because you don't know, right? If you're living under a military occupied situation that is built on violence and intimidation, we don't know what we're going to do. We can act with a sense of civil disobedience, and we're not going to instigate or try to increase the tension. But we did that, right? And immediately after about 10 or 15 minutes, one of the officers came and said to our leader, if your people don't take those signs down, we will commit violence upon this entire group tonight. And that we were warned that would happen. And so we knew what to do. We put them all away. We were not there again to ratchet up the tension. So I think there are moments where you need to engage in activism, especially when others cannot, right? If right now in the United States, around immigration and migrant work, around belief around Palestine, for those of us that our citizenship is pretty secure, though who knows what that's going to be in the future, we are called to be activists. We are called to be in the streets, risking our bodies, our resources, even sometimes our financial security and jobs because others can't. That's activism. And then there's the advocacy part, right? There are things that we need to do within the system with people who have influence and power to try to convince them. And I think it is different than shaming them or using threatening activism that I think has its place and its power into advocacy, which is trying to change institutions through those who have influence. So building relationships so that eventually folks will ask questions and be open to what they may not know or changing their mind. And then there's the affirmation part. I think part of what happens in this work, especially around Palestine right now, is that we need to know to one another and tell one another that what we are doing, we are not alone. I think that uh, dictatorship, apartheid, any kind of oppression wants us to believe that we are alone in this. And beloved community, resistance, all need to remind us that we are not alone. And so, strategically understanding that what we do in the world could be any one of those three. The same act, depending on the person, could be any one of those three, but we need to engage in all of them and be strategic about it, personally, individually, and then the organization you're part of. So to be an activist, to challenge, to disrupt, to be out there trying to wake people up, to be the advocate who is building relationships with people of influence so that institutions and systems can change. And the affirmation is to care for one another so that we are not reminded that we are not alone. Then I think we offer our gifts, talents, and resources that, again, require risk, sacrifice, and commitment. This is Joseph at the Easter egg hunt, working with a young person and just showing him about video. And Joseph is a professional videographer, so the ability to show some of these things, right? And took time off from his work to be there and to just make these kinds of moments. This was holy, right? This was this moment of this is why we do these things. This is not like poverty porn, saviorism. This is about understanding that we all have gifts to offer, talents and resources, and we need to risk, sacrifice, and commit to using those. So, however you might do that, I know that I will continue to do that in my own work, ministry, all those kind of things. So, which means what's next for me? So one, I'm going to share this recorded portion. It was supposed to have been recorded live, but it's not. This is all just me alone. And I'm going to lead 2 more delegations in 2026. We don't know what those are going to be or when. One will be a specific one, and then the other one will be a general one. And again, we'll focus on first timers. So make sure you sign up for my mailing list, and so you can get that information when it starts to come out. And I will continue to use whatever platforms I have to disrupt where need be, even when it's my own community, right? I think there is about activism that is against the easy enemy, and then there's activism that takes place in the communities where you belong, to advocate for change around policy and action in Palestine, and then continue to affirm what is happening for other activists and advocates and others, and to remind Palestinian friends that we are not, none of us are alone in this. And so, how we share things, how we connect with people, is to affirm that belonging and community are stronger than apartheid and occupation. So, I would invite you to stay connected to Sabeel. That's the information there. That middle picture there is one of my favorite cafes in Bethlehem called Stars and Bucks. So connect with Sabeel, connect with Fazna. I will include their links and how you can donate and sign up for their newsletters in the description. But I would definitely stay connected to them. If you want to contact me, thank you, Joseph, for these pictures. Bruce at Reyes-Chow.com. You can get to me. I'm at Reyes-Chow on the socials, mostly on Blue Sky and Instagram. And then I would encourage you and invite you. I'm one of those that makes his life itinerating, gigging, and so rely on the generosity of friends and strangers to subscribe to my newsletter, the Amalgamation newsletter, and podcast will be coming out soon. So I went into question and response time. If you do have questions or responses, you can subscribe to the Amalgamation, which will give you access to leave comments, and I'll try to respond to those as much. Again, thank you for hanging out. I'm glad you were. I hope this was useful to you. And again, if you have questions, thoughts, ideas about how to engage in your own activism, advocacy, or affirmation, please do not hesitate to ask.